Most coverage of Muslims in British news outlets has a negative slant, according to a major analysis by the Muslim Council of Britain, which concludes that news stories in the mainstream media are contributing to Islamophobia. A study found the Mail on Sunday had the most negative coverage of Islam, with 78% of its stories featuring Muslims having negative themes, above an already high industry average of 59%. Is mainstream media really fair and reflective, or does it generalize about all Muslims and feed into a border far-right narrative? Today, we have Sister Zahra Al-Alawi and Brother Faraz Ali Hamdani, and they are here to discuss whether mainstream media is Islamophobic. Zahra Al-Alawi, a television presenter and public speaker, she has graduated from the University of Hertfordshire with a degree in media and television. She has lectured and chaired conferences around the UK, Europe, and the Middle East. Her TV show, Women's View, on Sky 831 broadcasted over 300 episodes interviewing a range of women. Brother Faraz Ali Hamdani, a strategic finance professional and a volunteer with a variety of non-profit organizations in providing design, editorial, and communication support. Also, a family man living in Washington, D.C., where conversations about politics and religion have seemed to always be at the forefront of even casual table talk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear respected guests, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to a new show, a new episode of Debate Time, where we discuss the important topics, questions that appear on your mind. Now, today we are discussing a very important topic. Today we're discussing the topic of Islamophobia and the mainstream media. And to join me in this debate and to join me in this show to clarify these misconceptions about the Islamic religion or the Muslims and their presence in the media is my respected guests. This time we have a guest from the UK and we have a guest joining us from the United States of America. From the UK I have Sister Zahra Al-Alawi, and from the United States of America I have Brother Faraz Ali Hamdani. Assalamu alaikum to you both and welcome to Debate Time.
Wa alaikum salam, Sayyid. Thank you very much.
Wa alaikum salam.
I appreciate you joining me into the show, and inshallah we will do our best to answer some questions and take away some misconceptions, either in the minds of our dear brothers and sisters, the viewers of Imam Hussein TV, and also if this show was to be aired, inshallah, on other platforms, the misconceptions that some of the individuals or some of the organizations or the institutes, the people that work in the mainstream media could have or have about Islam and the Muslims. If I start the discussion or the debate regarding the mainstream media, if I start with Brother Faraz Ali Hamdani. Brother Faraz, what constitutes the mainstream media? What is the mainstream media?
Thank you, Sayyid. That's a great question that has probably different answers. I think first we think of some of the main news channels and publications, so TV, paper, but then the digital age has, I think, changed that landscape drastically. And I think we're quickly realizing social is also a mainstream channel. So I think it's largely a, wherever folks are consuming the most content, quickly can become the mainstream media.
And how easy is it to access the mainstream media today, especially with the technology and the smartphones and the notepads and the iPads? Wherever you go, you have you're surrounded by the media, either at home, at work, or outside. How easy is it for the youth, the young generation, anyone else to access the media?
Yeah, I'd actually say, we take access from two angles. I think access as a consumer, consuming the media is very, very easy. There's almost too much access and too much information and misinformation. So I think we're living in that age of over-information. So very, very easy to access the content. I think what's difficult, though, is the access for Muslims in particular to being on the other side of the content and being represented in that content. And I think that's what exacerbates the problem, where we have access easily to many, many forms of media, but we have less access to representation.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for clarifying that. If I go to the UK with Sister Zahra Al-Alawi. Sister Zahra, you yourself as someone who is experienced in the media, and you're a TV presenter and a lecturer who've lectured on many parts of the world. Out of your experience, how represented, or what is the capacity of the representation of the Muslims in the mainstream media, regardless of them being in the UK or other parts of the world?
First of all, Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid, to both you, Sayyid and Sayyid Faraz, and the viewers watching. So I've been on both mainstream media and let's say the media that's produced by our community. So I've experienced both sides of the scale. And when it comes to mainstream media, from my personal experience, I've been on the BBC, on Channel 4, on Channel 5, ITV3. So my own experience from the mainstream media is that they do have an agenda when it comes to representing Muslims. This is from my own personal experience. So there's two scales of it. One part is that you're either change who you are in order to adapt into what they perceive as a liberal Muslim, or you're viewed as a extreme Muslim. I'll give you an example. When I gave birth to my second child, I had just given birth. It was, I think it was 2 weeks. I had just given birth, and I got a call from Channel 5, and it was the news about the burqa ban. And they contacted me and they said, we want you to come on a news segment on Channel 5 to talk about the burqa ban and the hijab. And then I said, I've just given birth, I can't. And then they said, oh, don't worry, we'll pay for your taxi, we'll pay for your expenses. I said, but I've just given birth, I don't think I can travel. They say, okay, we'll bring the news crew to your house and we'll film the segment, the VT, which is imported into the news at home. And then I said, okay, fine. And then they said, someone will call you back. So when you're invited on the news, someone calls you, first of all, and kind of asks you some questions. So they said, do you think hijab should be implemented within Britain? Should it be a must? I said, no, everyone's free to dress as they like. They said, what's your views on the burqa ban? After 5 minutes, they called me back. They said, sorry, we're not going to go ahead with with this news. Obviously, I didn't give them the answers they want. I'm not extreme in my thought process. So they didn't go with the news. And that is I feel like in media, you get both extreme. They love putting both extremes on. They love putting right-wing extremists on to view their opinion, and they love putting extremist Muslims on to view their opinion. So this is how they get views, and I think it is very biased in their representation.
Ahsantum, thank you very much. Brother Faraz, you heard what Sister Zahra had to say because of her close experience with the British media, different media platforms. How big is because she said there is an agenda, there is a problem. These media platforms, they have a specific goal they want to arrive at. How big of a problem is Islamophobia in the mainstream media?
Yeah, thank you. Sister Zahra touched on a very good point that, there is a cost of admission. There's a price to the ticket to be a part of that mainstream media. And I'm also thinking of, Hollywood or entertainment media as part of mainstream media these days. And it's easier to see those examples there, but also in the news in order to participate as a Muslim, you have to be self-incriminating. You have to, comically or caricaturize your faith and your values. You have to do something that attracts, the base that wants to still feel like Islam and Muslims as the other or as something inferior or something, that isn't truly valued. And so I think that cost of admission is a tough one. And I know I talked about representation at first, and I think it's important that we start to be a little bit more cautious in representation, and not celebrate representation for representation's sake, but only when our values, our culture, our identity, all of that is maintained, and not ridiculed or put down. Because I think the agenda is there, and I think the interesting thing is taking it broader than just the media. It's who consumes the media. And I think a conversation that has happened in America over the last 6 years in particular, but has always been a clear-cut case, is there is a large demographic of folks who are inherently Islamophobic, or prone to fear mongering or othering. That's unfortunate. It's been the case for a long time. We saw it through the last presidential election, the last two rounds of it, and it's still there. But I think the issue that I would love to talk about more and hear from others is, this concept of it's chicken or the egg. The folks that are consuming this media and the folks that are producing this media, right? Which one came first? Did the media create this Islamophobia, or was it inherently there in certain demographics and we just weren't admitting it? And because of that and that demand, the media is susceptible to promoting this further because it makes money. I think at the end of the day, the media empire is a business, and the credibility that journalism and news outlets had in being authoritative and informational sources has slowly been eroded as they've focused on building a business as opposed to focused on information, intellectual honesty.
Well, as someone who's been in very close contact with establishing TV channels here in the UK, I'm well aware of organizations existing that have broadcasting codes, and organizations that have similar to the Ofcom we have here in the UK. We have a body which is called Ofcom. They check and they monitor every single or most of the media coverage in the UK in regards with the TV, radio and the newspapers, anything to do with media. Now, if anyone was to listen to the first 10 minutes of the show and listen to you both guests saying that there is an agenda and there is a problem and there is Islamophobia in the media, they would come and question, well, I would agree if this was a discussion made about some of the media platforms in the Middle East or in Asia, but you're in the UK or you're in the United States of America, where there is groups, there are organizations, media, government bodies that have code of conduct, broadcasting code, regulations. How could this be? How could Islamophobia be in the mainstream media, and you are in a country that says that we have freedom of speech and freedom of right and freedom of media? Sister Zahra.
Well, you're absolutely right. There are bodies and organizations which regulate the media in terms of whether it's whether it's tabloids or television. But at the same time, when this is disguised, when Islamophobia is disguised, it's not apparent, then there's not much that many people can do about it. If you invite an extremist or you invite someone with their views, then not much can be done about it. Of course, there are avenues which you can take where you can complain, and we've done this in the past. I'm not sure if the viewers remember, but there was a documentary broadcasted on Channel 4 a few years ago. I think it was actually 12 years ago or 11 years ago, which had misinformation about Shia Muslims. And the Al-Khoury Foundation in the UK, we took it upon ourselves to make a complaint. We sent many complaints in, and we actually got a slot on Channel 4 where we actually went to Channel 4, we went on the program and we voiced our opinions, and they brought the director of the documentary and we voiced our opinions and said, this is clear misinformation about the Shia. Shia do not believe this, Shia do not believe that. So there are avenues that we can take where we can complain. I mean, I went on the show myself. I remember Sheikh Muhammad Hali was on, Hajj Amir Taqi was on, and many other people in our community, and we spoke directly with the director of the documentary and we voiced our opinions. So this is a clear example that if anyone's watching now, if you see a news channel, if you see a article written and you feel like this is misinformation or it may harbor hatred and Islamophobia, then you have the right to complain, and there are avenues to do so. But when it's disguised, when someone labels Muslims in a certain way and it's not very apparent, then there's not much people can do about it, because both sides can argue their point, and it comes down to proof. If we can prove this is hate speech, then it will be removed. If you cannot prove this is hate speech, then it cannot be removed. And the thing is, I just want to make a very clear point that what I believe contributes directly to Islamophobia is two great components. Number one is the media, it's journalists, it's the media, and number two is politicians. So there's two parts of it, and the same thing goes down to politicians. Are they allowed to say what they want to say and get away with it? I just want to make a very important point, because just recently, I'm sure many people in the UK already know that a report came out regarding the Conservative Party, and the report shows that there is Islamophobia within the Conservative Party. Although they claim that they do not tolerate any forms of discrimination, it was proven that there is Islamophobia within the Conservative Party. And I've had my own experience with the Conservative Party.
Sister Zahra, that is again a very wide spectrum where politics is mixed with media. I'm sorry to stop you there. Inshallah, we'll go on a short break, and inshallah, when we come back, we'll continue this very important topic and debate. Brothers and sisters, you heard what the guests had to say. Stay with us, and we'll continue the discussion after the break. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my respected brothers and sisters, viewers of Imam Hussein TV. Welcome to debate time, and today, as you know, we are discussing Islamophobia and the mainstream media. Before the break, Sister Zahra Al-Alawi made a very important point where she said there is two sides to this problem that we have in the mainstream media, where Islam and Muslims are being constantly looked down upon. And these are the media, the journalists, or the politicians. Sister Zahra, before the break, you were saying that there was a recent report speaking about the Conservative Party. I would appreciate if you can continue this important point.
Yeah, so as I said, there was a report about the Conservative Party that says that there is Islamophobia within the Conservative Party. There was, I think from 2015, there was 727 incidents of discrimination, and 2/3 of those were Islamophobia. So when you have this embedded within the government, it's clear that there are people that will be influenced by this. I just want to say my own personal experience. A couple of years ago, I sat down with the Prime Minister of the Conservative Party, David Cameron, and we sat down at Downing Street, on the same table, discussing the achievements of Muslim women. And we had a very, very nice discussion about the achievements of Muslim women. There was other Muslim women, British Muslim women as well. And it was a very nice discussion. A day after the meeting was conducted, there was an article published that said that Muslim women are traditionally submissive, and it attacked Muslim women, and there was a huge outroar. There was a huge campaign against this. That are Muslim women traditionally submissive? What's going on? So there is a clear, Islamophobic remarks that are presented by politicians, which encourage the public to have this view on Muslims. Boris Johnson said that women are, that wear the niqab are like the letterbox. In fact, there was reports that after he made those remarks, Muslim women were attacked in the streets and people shouted at them and said, letterbox, letterbox. Where did they get the word letterbox from? It was from Boris Johnson. So you could clearly see that when remarks are made by politicians, this does affect the public, this does affect the population, and that's how you see Islamophobia rise.
Thank you very much. Well, what you're revealing and what you're saying is showing one side of the story where the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is willing to sit down with you and other Muslim women to discuss the contributions of the Muslim women in the main life in the UK, and another part, the media, the journalists, they come and start attacking. So there clearly is a problem in the UK, but there is an opinion that says that in the recent years, because of the good work that you yourself and your colleagues in the media have been doing, like the Muslim imams, the mosques, speaking to the Prime Minister and the other organizations, the Muslims have been portrayed in a better way in the media in the UK, rather than the United States has, made the Muslims look far worse. Brother Faraz, how much do you agree with the statement that the problem of Islamophobia and Muslims being portrayed in a negative way is more of a problem in the United States than it is in the UK?
Yeah, I'm unsure
Because
if I'm
I know you
qualified
said,
to.
in the presidential election and before the presidential election with the previous U.S. President Donald Trump, and how much he was attacking the media because they were against him. So how much of a problem is this where you are?
Certainly. I'll start with, it's hard to compare the discrimination that we all face in different parts of the world, but it's certainly a problem here. I think the US is probably just a further behind on the timeline compared to England. I think we have a more recent documented history. Not to say things like Islamophobia haven't always existed, but I think we're a little behind on the timeline of addressing them. And I think the recent presidential election, back from the past election and this one, showed us that it is exposing what has existed for a long time and giving it a platform. I think what's dangerous now is we're normalizing the extremist views against Muslims and many, many other minorities and faiths. And by giving them a platform and allowing them to participate in mainstream media, we are essentially, leading to the radicalization of the majority of who I would like to think, the country's demographic is kind of in the middle, not squarely either in support of anyone in particular, but not firmly against. And what's slowly happening is, I think Sister Zahra talked about some great examples of where it's very clear that there's an Islamophobic agenda. And I think what the United States should be wary of, and America should be wary of, is the subtle and subconscious biases that the media is interjecting. I think you talked about a little bit of, well, we can't be, Islamophobic or racist. That's not our set of values. I think words for the sake of words that aren't supported by the platform are easy to spot. If you look at the titles of different articles or look at the banner of a segment, you can quickly see, if you take any intellectual rigor on the way words are used when it's a Muslim or a Muslim country versus anyone else. Faith is never brought up when you describe anyone that's not Muslim. Countries of origin are rarely brought up. We use generic terms like suspects. In crimes, we conflate faith with negative things when it's related to Islam, and we don't when it's anything else, and we tend to keep it very objective when it's a non-Muslim. And I think there's a lot of bias that is subconscious, where people in the middle, the majority of people who are not radicalized against Islam and Islamophobic, they are slowly being subverted to not appreciating the plight of Muslims because it is under the radar, if that makes sense.
Yep. Ever since the brutal attacks of the September of the 11th in New York, and also the 7/7 events in the UK, in London, the Muslims became under the limelight. And there were some organizations that took advantage of that to bring down the Muslims because of their own agenda. For example, we have politicians or business organizations, businessmen, who are, pumping tens of millions of dollars and pounds into the mainstream media. They're buying media platforms, newspapers, satellite and media channels, news agencies, for them to be able to get through what they want against a specific group of people. Now, I would like to quote Dr. Charles Haynes. He is from the Religious Freedom Center in America, in the United States. In 2016, there was a meeting, a debate, and Dr. Haynes says that we need to bring out the truth about American Muslims. I know there are organizations similar to this Religious Freedom Center. They work to highlight the presence of the Muslims, regardless of them being in America or other parts of the world. And he was saying that when I write my column in the newspaper, I get people who are Americans. We're not speaking about Muslim Americans or African Americans or Americans from other backgrounds. They're saying Americans that are originally Americans, they write to me and they quote to me segments or parts from the Holy Quran. And that shows the extent of this let's say, propaganda campaign against Islam and against the Muslims, where tens of millions of dollars or pounds have been pumped into these media platforms. And to an extent that normal Europeans, they quote from the Holy Quran, attacking the Muslims. Where are the Muslims? If one was to come and say, okay, we have this side of the picture, where is the other side? Where are you? Where are you in the media? Where are you on these satellite channels and in these media platforms? Why are you not coming out and speaking about your issues and defending yourself, whether it's in the United States of America or in England, Sister Zahra?
So, I believe the question is that why are we not setting up our own kind of media outlets? Is that correct?
Yes.
So I think when I started entering media about, I would say 15 years ago, there was no media establishment in the UK, a Shia media establishment, or even a Muslim establishment. I think we've come a long way, and I think especially with the help of the advancement of the digital age, I think us Muslims have more of a chance to get our voice out there. I remember when I started when I entered media about 15 or 16 years ago, the only way that I could get into media was joining the mainstream channels, and I did do work experience in many of the mainstream channels, but once again, I felt like I had to conform my hijab in order to fit in. And I remember clearly someone in mainstream media said the only way that you will be successful in the media is that if you don't wear this black garb. And that was word to word what was told to me. So I think now we have more of a chance to get out there. Many people say that I was very shy as a child. I was never the sort of person that wanted to get into media. But I recognize that if media can manipulate people, if media can change the opinions of people, then we have a responsibility to go out there and try to iron out these misconceptions. We have a responsibility to show the true beauty of Islam, to show the reality of Islam. And I think especially as a Muslim woman, when you look at Islamophobia, you see that the majority of Islamophobic attacks are actually against Muslim women. Because we are very visible in our hijab, we get attacked much more than the men. So I think it's more of a responsibility for women to go out there. And even if anyone wants to attack Islam, what is the first attack they say about Islam? Islam oppresses women. Islam forces women to wear hijab. So it's our responsibility to go out there and show the world that I choose to wear the hijab. I choose to live and to dress this way. And I think a woman's voice is very, very powerful. And we see that when Fatima Zahra alayhi salam went to FEDEC and she delivered the speech of FEDEC, her voice was very, very powerful in protecting the rights. And when we see misconceptions happening, it's our responsibility to go out there. And I think we have more of an opportunity. The power has been put in our hands. We have the digital age where we can open a page. We can there's YouTube. You can open a page. There are different channels that we can join. So it's every one of our responsibility. When we see these misconceptions out there against Islam, when we see this hatred out there against Islam, it's our responsibility to go out there and show people the reality of Islam, the truth about Islam. And I think if we all come together, I think we are able to make change to a certain degree, as we've seen. We've seen people call into channels and say, my views have changed.
Ahsantum, thank you very much. Again, we touched upon very important points here in this second segment of the show, and I'm sure there are much more things that we can discuss and share between ourselves. My dear brothers and sisters, please remain where you are and stay with us, where we come back to you in the third and last segment of the show. Stay with us, we'll be back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear respected brothers and sisters, and welcome to the third and last segment of the debate time, where we have with us in this show my respected guest, Sister Zahra Al-Alawi from the UK and Brother Faraz Ali Hamdani from Washington, and we are trying to get a glimpse and touch upon some of the issues that the Muslims are facing when an occurrence happens in the world, and through that occurrence the mainstream media here in the West, and sometimes the media in the Middle East and in other parts of the world, they are fed the news bulletins from some of the news agencies. When something happens around the world, straight away the blame or the fingers are pointing towards a certain sect or a certain group, and they are associated to Islam. And this is how Islamophobia is generated. But there is, again, an opinion that individuals who are elevated to prominent positions and are given the limelight or the spotlight in the media, they are the individuals that are able to make a change, make a difference. Individuals similar to sports stars and athletes. For example, in recent years, there is an opinion that says that, for example, Mohamed Salah, the famous football player, or Mo Farah, the athlete, they are individuals who have reduced the prejudice against Muslims. Also, let me quote that there are some Liverpool fans that have a chant that goes, "If he scores another few, then I'll be Muslim too." Similar to these kind of events. So these things highlight to us, brothers and sisters, and I don't know if my respected guests agree with me, but the more we have very prominent, important figures who leave their fingerprints in the media, the more we have a chance of eradicating and reducing Islamophobia. Brother Faraz, now, how much of a platform do we see for Muslims in the media in the United States of America? I'm saying this because I can see members of the Congress, or there are new members of the I don't know what you call it there, but the parliament here in the UK. They have individuals who are Muslims, and they are given media coverage every time something happens. Now, in the United States of America, what's it like? I mean, do people get media coverage and media platform if they were Muslim?
That's a great question. I think we are making strides in having political candidates, district attorneys, various forms of government and media have Muslim figures of prominence. I think the irony is, right, when it is time to call on a Muslim identity to speak up about issues that concern us, it's usually not those figures. It's someone else. Out of the millions or billions of people in the demographic, it's odd who the media always picks. So I think we do get selective representation there, but it's not always appropriate. I liked what you said about the sports teams. I think representation there, people with platforms, is important, right? In the U.S., we have Kyrie Irving in the NBA, who was talking about Ramadan and fasting during this last season. Derrick Rose, another prominent player, in his social media, has talked about Allah. What that does is it helps reduce the fear and the othering of Islam and Muslims, to help normalize us and say, hey, Muslims aren't just about this other category where we kind of put them in a box and just say that they're their faith and nothing else. It makes us more similar and gives us an ability to have a seat at the table. But having that seat at the table, I think, continues with, I know it's contrary to the discussion we're having now about being more influential in mainstream media. It's almost being influential in all the other aspects of life as well. I think media there's inherent bias in where you consume, right? If someone in America watches Fox News, it's very, very likely their ideologies are very fixated. If someone watches another news channel, right, it's usually a pretty consistent set of ideologies, or at least an understanding of there's a tilt and there's an appreciation of what I'm trying to validate in myself here. And so I think when voices come from athletes who don't necessarily have a media objective, it's more genuine. And the genuineness also comes from all folks in all parts of life being involved in more than our own communities, but in our broader local communities. And I think that's how we get our representation, because we aren't getting fair representation or media access unless we create our own media, such as you all have. And I think that's very important for the community to invest in itself. But I think to answer the base of your question, in the United States, there is still not enough Muslim figures speaking on Muslim issues. And I think we're not being centered in the discussion. And the other part of that is we are only brought in to talk about Muslim issues. And if the media wanted to actually be intellectually honest, look for your Muslim demographic personalities that can speak to a variety of other things you discuss, and not only when there's a provocative issue that deals directly with extremism. And I think that's the most unfair thing that we're seeing now is we are only invited to discussions which are inherently going to harm us.
It's amazing that you say there are not enough individuals that are stepping up to be represented on the mainstream media. Where are the academic institutes? Where are these centers of studies where they commit to studies and investigations, where they see the need for Muslims to be bringing themselves up, educating their children, encouraging them to take on courses and taking on degrees that are to do with politics and media, for them to be represented and representing their culture and their religion and their community. I mean, the United States of America, regardless of the mosques and the Islamic centers, there are many important figures in the United States as an imams, as a lead Islamic public leaders. I mean, we saw how the tragic events in New Zealand brought the whole country together, and there was a prime minister that came out and introduced certain laws and regulations with the help of these Islamic leaders and these imams. I mean, in the United States, similar to the UK, I'm sure Sister Zahra Al-Alawi agrees with me that we have the figures, but it is sometimes not in the hands of these figures. Sometimes there is an occurrence happening in any part of the world. We pick up the phone. We call these news outlets, we call these newspapers, we tell them we are wanting to express our feelings and our opinion regarding this issue. But we don't get through. They take your information, they take your point of contact, and they don't come back to you. Now, what is it? Is it that we don't have enough influence? We have the figures, we don't have enough influence on these media platforms because they are politicized, they are run by political individuals? Or is it that we are not doing enough? I mean, it's good for Sister Zahra to come out and say, it's up to me. I come out in the public wearing my hijab, representing the Muslims, making my voice heard. Where is the problem? I mean, who is overpowering who? The politics in these countries? Or is it the Muslims are not standing up to what they need to do? Sister Zahra.
I believe it's a bit of both, if I'm entirely honest. I think for a long time, many of our communities did not encourage people to enter media, because media, in a sense, was in its infancy. We didn't know the huge extent of the influence that media could create. And I think especially now, we have seen how influential social media is, how influential media is, that it could change your beliefs, it could change your outlook in life. And I think more and more people are entering media. When I entered media about 16 years ago, many people were saying, why doesn't Zahra, study to become a pharmacist or a doctor? Why is she going into media? What is media going to do? And I'm very fortunate that although my parents are very conservative, very in their thought, they did encourage me to go into media. But I think more so now that we are seeing more people within our community entering media. I go to Imam Hussein TV, and these are all brothers that were raised in the same mosque that I attended. And mashallah, many of them are very talented and very knowledgeable in media, in how to operate a camera, how to edit, how to create graphics. So we have seen a huge improvement with our community. And I completely agree with you. I think there is the talent within our community. We see amazing speakers, we see amazing scholars, even female speakers. Alhamdulillah, there has been an increase in this current day and age. But I think there is still a taboo within our community when it comes to female speakers. And I must emphasize on this, because many times women are not encouraged to take the front line and speak, because is it part of the hijab, is it part of the awrah or not? And I think more women should be encouraged, because I think there could be a great change when a woman's voice is heard. And that's number one. And number two, I completely agree with you. I think every organization, every media outlet has an agenda. Every single media outlet and every organization, be it a good agenda or a bad agenda. So in terms of, if we want to be represented within media, and I liked when you mentioned sports figures like Mohamed Salah, because there's been a lot of reports that say that that Islamophobia has actually decreased in Liverpool after he came out and obviously became very successful. And there's even articles published in The Guardian of people converting to Islam. I remember an article I read in The Guardian by an individual called Ben, who said that I converted to Islam because of Mohamed Salah, because it was the first Muslim that I could relate to. But I agree with Sayyid Faraz when he says that when it comes to individuals, it's fine when they are represented within their own talents, but they will never be brought forward to talk about issues regarding Islam. They're very selective when they bring people to talk about Islam or Muslim issues. It's either the right-wing extremists or the Islamic extremists. And when you mention attacks against Muslims, for example, the attack in Norway took place in Norway, Finsbury Park Mosque, when the attack happened there, all these people who attacked Muslims labeled themselves as right-wing extremists. And when an investigation is done, they see that they were actually consuming right-wing extremist material. So you see that media has a huge influence on people that then go out and attack Muslims and create crimes of Islamophobia are individuals that have been influenced by the media. So I think you're right, it's both parts. I wouldn't say it's one or the other, it's both parts.
Ahsantum. Brother Faraz, recently, in the coming back to the sporting world, as we are in Europe, in the UK, we're going through the Euros, the football tournament. And in the beginning, before each tournament, each match starts, we see the players from both sides. They take the knee to show their support and to show that they do not relate to extremism in regards with the Africans or the black Africans. This Black Lives Matter movement has put its everlasting effects on the opinion around the world. Don't you think that the Muslims need to come out and represent themselves so much, whether it's in the field of sports, in the field of talent, in the field of whatever platform? Youth like yourselves, like Sister Zahra Al-Alawi and you respected Brother Faraz Ali, you are family men. You encourage your children and your siblings and your family members to engage in the media. As they sit down and watch a football match and see that these players are taking the knee, these managers are standing in respect for these individuals who have been subjected to these kind of extremist opinions and extremist behaviors. When our youngsters come out and open that YouTube channel or open that media platform, the BBC or Channel 4 or NBC or these kind of media outlets in the world, and they see that there is an extremist opinion being portrayed, isn't it important for us to come out and educate our children that every time they see an extremist representing them, that they need to speak out and clarify either to their friends or to their colleagues that this does not represent me, this is not what I believe in? Brother Faraz.
Excellent. A lot to unpack there. Yes and no to most of those things. I think first let's just acknowledge how unfair it is for Muslims to constantly have to defend or repudiate for the whole of an entirety of a demographic as individuals, right? Every time Islam comes up, we are all responsible for speaking out and educating folks. And I think the Black Lives Matter movement and last summer, after the murder of George Floyd, we all learned a lot about terms such as allyship, centering, and wanted, gaslighting, and the things, the tactics, the damaging tactics that happen to oppress and marginalize folks. And I think as it comes to Muslims, obviously, Imam Hussein al-Islam taught us we must speak out against all injustices and wrongs. And so, not just for Islamophobic statements, but we need to be at the forefront of fighting against all causes that are, positively reflecting human rights, and people's rights. I think, you know, the sports analogy is a really good one, and I'm going to say something that might come off very controversial, but the narrative in the U.S., right, with folks taking a knee, and how that was portrayed and how that was interpreted by folks. The United States has become a sports team in a very, sense of its own. The political capital of being, like chanting USA, USA and the flag, the values it represented are now more of a sports team to a large part of this country. And that is very problematic because that is the roots of kind of an ignorant nationalism, in my opinion, where in the media, it's you have to win, we win. And if we win, someone else loses. And it really fulfills this narrative where less questions are asked, there's less intellectual honesty. It's us versus them. And I think the sports figures that you brought up, it's very ironic because it truly feels like patriotism has become less about the values of this country and more about a sports team and which can do no wrong. And so I think that's a very wrong approach to have, kind of moving through the system of a global superpower. I do want to backtrack just a little bit. I know we talked about having the figures and not the access. A little word of encouragement for all of my American brothers and sisters. Most of our families are first and second generation immigrants. There's been a lot that's been done by the generation before us and our generation to get us here. And I think it is a really pivotal time for us to do the things like Sister Zahra is mentioning, to take that accountability. It's unfortunate that we are all asked to speak on behalf of entire millions and billions of people, which is sometimes correct or incorrect, but we need to take these opportunities and speak out because now is the time to become assimilated in this country and culture, but also to be prominent in media and otherwise.
Ahsantum, thank you very much. Very important discussion, brothers and sisters, my respected viewers. As you can clearly sense from both of my guests, regardless of them being in the UK or in the United States, they are emphasizing on the importance of stepping up, being there. Every time something happens, we shouldn't let the media out there decide for themselves who they invite and which narrative they decide to broadcast. Brothers and sisters, this is not going to go away. Maybe this is the beginning. So we need to be there. I mean, I'm not portraying everyone in the mainstream media to be against Islam or Islamophobic. No. There are individuals who are doing their best, who are playing their part to set things straight and right. Now I want to invite my dear guests from wherever they are, from this platform, in the United Kingdom and from the United States of America, to say their final words, their piece of advice and their final comments to our brothers and sisters wherever they are about Islamophobia and the mainstream media. We'll start with you, Sister Zahra Al-Alawi.
I think it's very important, first of all, to have these discussions because many people, for example, they may say, when they look at Islamophobia, they may think it's just a few attacks or verbal attacks in the streets or a few remarks in the streets, but it goes more deeply than that. Islamophobia is embedded within the media and it's embedded within politics, as we mentioned previously. So I really want to, whoever's watching here today, I want to say that the power is really in our hands now, especially with the advancement of social media and advancement of the digital age. We have the power in our hands. Now, of course, it is still regulated and it's still controlled to a certain extent, as we've seen many Islamic channels, their website domains were seized a couple of days ago, but we still have the power. So I encourage anyone, even if it's to a small capacity, when we learn from the Ahl Bayt alayhim as-salam is that when we see injustice take place, then it's our responsibility to go out and try to correct that. And as brothers Sayyid Faraz mentioned, it is a huge responsibility when you're out there trying to speak, for millions and millions of Muslims, which in a sense could be a positive and it could be a negative. But I think with so much hatred, with so much misrepresentation against us, it is important that we go out there and represent the true side of Islam. And just in recent days, many people think that Islamophobia has gone away because, of lockdown, and we haven't seen many attacks take place. But Islamophobia is still present. We've seen in Canada just recently a whole family being run over. Just yesterday, 2 Muslim sisters wearing the hijab were attacked in Canada as well. So Islamophobia is still present. So it's our responsibility to go out and speak about how we can then tackle this from a grassroots level. How can we ensure that media outlets are not representing Muslims in a dehumanizing way? Because when you dehumanize Muslims, when you portray them as villains, then it becomes kind of justified that you can attack them. How can we tackle the rise of right-wing extremism? So these are very important points. It's not an interesting discussion that many people will want to watch, but it's a very important discussion that I hope that we can take within our communities and ensure that Islamophobia is tackled from all the angles that we see.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that you're short in time and you have other commitments. Thank you very much for your input. Brother Faraz, what do you have to say in the last few moments, advising our brothers and sisters?
First, for any non-Muslims or anyone questioning whether Islamophobia exists that are watching, just a very clear statement that acknowledging Islamophobia exists does not make you necessarily an Islamophobe, right? Acknowledging racism exists does not make you a racist. So I think the first hurdle that we're seeing in America especially is the identity of self. It's almost ego and fear that if I admit these bad things exist, that I am one of the perpetrators. And you become a perpetrator by not acknowledging that these exist. So I think that's one thing that's important to get out there. I think we're familiar with the Malcolm X quote, newspapers will have you hating the people that are oppressed, loving the people doing the oppressing. There's an African proverb and similar ones in many cultures on, until the lion learns to write, the story will always glorify the hunter. And that's where we transition to our Muslim, not just our youth, our elders, everyone. We need to take control of our own narrative. And I think part of the way to do that is to not always make our narrative about religion. We don't need to preach Islam necessarily, but we need to live Islam. And if we live Islam, the obligations we have to our neighbors, simple things like that, we can, from a grassroots organic level, shift the DNA of countries and nations. And that's unfortunately the best tool we have, because the media at an enterprise level is systematically pitched against us.
Ahsantum. Thank you very much. We need to live to Islam. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, the commander of the believers, once said, الناس صنفان إما أخ لك في الدين أو نظير لك في الخلق. People have 2 types. Either they are your brother in religion and faith, or your equivalent in humanity. Brothers and sisters, we are all human beings and we have the rights. Everywhere you go, there are rights set by these political governments for every individual living under their banner. Now, we need to organize ourselves with our religious and non-religious institutes and organizations. Every time we feel that Islam is being attacked or Muslims being attacked, regardless of them being in Canada, a whole family eradicated, or 2 Muslim sisters being attacked, we need to come out. We need to seek assistance legally, document everything and come out and speak. We live in areas and in world that says that freedom of speech and freedom of practice. Come out and speak. Make this known. Make everyone known that you're there. And through this and only this, through these movements, where you are going to be able to live in peace and harmony with other members of the community and society. I would like to thank, at the end of the show, the debate time, my respected guests from the United Kingdom, Sister Zahra Al-Alawi, and from the United States of America, from Washington, Brother Faraz Ali Hamdani, for joining us in this, what was a very interesting debate and dialogue. And inshallah, through this and many more shows and episodes, we will be able to address these kind of important issues. I would like to thank my guests for being on the show with me, and I would like to thank you, my brothers and sisters, for following us in this episode. Thank you and stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.